Hello and welcome to What the Hey, where I'm your regular host of What the Hey, and today on What the Hey, I'm once again answering yet another question. When I go to my notebook of knowledge, I see the question of, what the hey is Japan? Now this question comes from Mr. 2007, so hello to you and thank you very much for the question. In terms of a very basic description, Japan is a country that is widely known for its innovations and contributions to the world's economy and culture. Throughout its lengthy history of trade, military, art, and history, Japan is widely and largely known for its overall hospitality. One of the first things that I was like, I actually gotta know what this is what the word Japan means. The word of Japan simply means land of the rising sun. And the reason as to why the country has that name is because China's perspective of where the sun rises is where Japan is at. Speaking more on the directional side of things, if you're not exactly sure where Japan is actually at, if you look at a map, it's very close to North and South Korea as well as China. More or less, it's to the right of all of those. And more specifically, in comparison to South and North Korea as well as China, it is to the east. One of the first places that you'll probably hear mentioned in reference to Japan would be Tokyo, which is the capital of Japan, and overall the population for the country is around 125 million, which is quite a lot. Now the topic of finances, money, and currency is always a big thing for really any country, and for Japan what they use is the Japanese yen. And to put it in personal bias perspective, $1 US equals around 140 Japanese yen. And for the longest time, I was so confused because I like to watch YouTube channels of people who live in Japan or travel to Japan, and I was always so confused about like how expensive everything sounded. And I mean, some stuff is expensive, but it's just to actually see how the currency works is pretty cool. Another important fact about Japan is the actual language that they speak, which would be Japanese. But to be more detailed, it can kind of be split up into separate avenues like kanji and kana. And if you're someone who loves to learn new languages, this one may be a bit of a challenge because there are so many letters and symbols in the overall Japanese language, but go you if you attempt it and you do it, because that's great. In reference as to how Japan is run government-wise, they operate under a constitutional monarchy, which basically kind of has one main person that represents Japan, but they also have to listen to other people and get input before actually making really any big decisions. If you happen to be someone who enjoys research on the religious side of things, one of the bigger groupings of religion in Japan would be Buddhism. And I'll kind of bring this up a little bit later, but the reason as to why Buddhism is so prevalent in Japan is because of the cultural and religious upbringing of the country. So Buddhism is pretty popular, but you also have stuff like Shinto and Christian, so Buddhism isn't the only religion in Japan, it's just one of the bigger ones. This is similar to something I brought up earlier, but the flag of Japan has pretty cool symbolism. The actual flag of Japan seems super simplistic because it's white and red with like the red circle in the middle, but it's very similar in meaning as to what the actual word of Japan means. I mentioned earlier how the word Japan essentially means land of the rising sun, and the red circle on the Japanese flag essentially means the same thing because it's circle of the sun. The last basic fact that I'm going to introduce for Japan is its national animal, which I know that's super random and probably not that important, but I love to learn about that kind of stuff. And specifically for Japan, the green pheasant is the national animal that represents the country, which to me kind of makes sense because it's very ornate, very pretty, and very detailed. So now that all of that is out of the way, I'm going to give a very brief, early, and condensed history of Japan. So the start of Japan wasn't really documented by Japan itself, rather by China. And none of the references to Japan really started until the 1st century BCE, where China was like, we can actually utilize this country and kind of make it a big thing. So they're like, we're actually going to kind of document what it's about. And it's kind of an overall and lasting theme for the start and continuation of Japan that China really helped them out with getting started in general. And there were a lot of Chinese cultural aspects that were put onto Japan, like the Chinese writing system as well as the religion of Buddhism, as I mentioned earlier. But then you have other obvious aspects like art. And then when Japan really started to take off was around 660 BCE when it got its first emperor. And if you know anything about Japan, I feel like one of the big aspects that a lot of people will bring up when they talk about Japan is like the long line of emperors. And a lot of the individuals that came in to fill the role as Emperor of Japan came from a lot of different families who were high up in the government and had a lot of respect already. And really one of the bigger things that happens with any kind of country, really any type of government, is that through its rulers there are going to be a lot of wars. And a lot of the improvement and expansion of the Japanese emperor rule came from wars like the Mongol invasion of Japan. You had the 38 Years' War, the Summer War, the Japanese invasion of Taiwan, the Boxer Rebellion, the invasion of French Indochina, and then you of course had really big involvements with military in examples like World War I and World War II. But going back into the less chaotic and military side of things, Japan is really known for its landmarks and overall contributions. For Japanese contributions, you have examples like big brand car companies, tech companies, video game companies, as well as art companies. And then for landmarks, of course, you got big stuff like Mount Fuji, but then you also have man-made stuff like the Shibuya Crossing as well as the Tokyo Tower. And this kind of goes in my general opinion, but I think the things that I usually think of when I think of Japan are the people, the history, the food, the sporting events, the different conventions, all the very beautiful nature. You also have various examples like Japanese gardens, aquariums, zoos, different types of nature like cherry blossoms, and stuff like origami. Another big aspect of Japan that I usually think about whenever I watch videos of people living in or visiting Japan is just how colorful and like interactive it is. Because like here in the States, of course you got like monuments and you can go to museums and stuff, but all the videos that I see of people who live in Japan, everything's so artistic and just really fun. And of course, none of this is to say that Japan is the greatest country in the world, because a lot of people will point out how a lot of people romanticize it. And really, any country can be romanticized, so it's not surprising that Japan has aspects to it that a lot of people are drawn towards. But there's still a lot of cool aspects about it that make it really cool and intriguing for a lot of people. I definitely think that I want to visit Japan at some point. I don't think I would live in it permanently or anything, but just visiting the famous landmarks and seeing all the history I think would just be super cool. But that's essentially the answer to the question, so if you have any questions, let me know and I'll get to working on them as soon as I can, but that's about it. So thank you very much for watching. Bye.